This is Heather Vickery with the Brave Files podcast, and you are listening to Pop Goes Your World.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 129, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Movie Review. Chris McBrien along with Derek Myers, who we affectionately refer to as Caveman, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. You'll find Derek on Twitter at Amaron_DM, and you'll find me on Twitter at CMcBrien. Remember, McBrien is I-E-N, and popgoesyourworld.com is our website with all of our contact information. And if you listen to the show on iTunes, please take a minute and leave us a review while you're there. Derek Myers, what is going on in pop culture in your world, my friend?
Hey, Chris. I've had a chance to revisit a couple of movies I really enjoyed over the past week.
Nice.
And I got a chance to see the season premiere of the TV show Westworld. Season 3 started this week.
Okay, yeah. I started that
fantastic.
show. I watched 3 episodes of season 1. I gave up on it. I didn't like it. But you're saying season 3, you're in it. It's good.
Season 3, super good, fantastic. Nice. It's my only real criticism is the if I remember correctly, it's the writer and showrunner of Westworld. It's the same guy or the same people that did a show called Person of Interest that was on like maybe 7 or 8 years ago. It ran for a while.
I think that had I never saw it, but it had the guy from Lost in it that played Ben. If I remember correctly.
Yes. Anyway, that show was really good in and of itself. And it was about like a thinking computer that they used to help people who were going to be in jeopardy. The computer basically was able to predict something bad's going to happen to this person and you have to go and help them. And this Westworld obviously is about a theme park that has like semi-intelligent robots that can do stuff. So it's starting to get in that whole idea of like the AI and what can the AI do, and is there good robots and bad robots. So I was talking to a friend of mine about this earlier this week, and he said, I like Westworld a lot. I like where it's going, but he's like, I've kind of already seen this in Person of Interest, which was by even some of the same creators. So he's like, I hope they don't just go down the same road that we already saw them do in the previous show. But we're only 1 episode in to what I believe is a 10-episode season. So I've got high hopes. And this show, the production values are so good. The cast is great. I'm really interested to see where this is going. I really, really enjoyed the first one. And the 2 movies that I revisited this week, one of them is called Yesterday. Came out last year. Did you ever have a chance to see this one?
I didn't. You mentioned it last week that you watched that one, and it was like just recently you watched it, and it sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it's a sort of a what if story where a guy gets into an accident early in the movie, and when he wakes up, nobody has ever heard of the Beatles. So he decides that he's a pretty talented musician in and of his own right, and he passes off their songs as his own. So yeah, I think I was watching this last week just before we started the podcast, and then I finished watching it not long after, and so I've been listening to the Beatles music all week. I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was great. Upon subsequent viewing, I didn't necessarily think the ending hit as well as it could have. It's like they didn't really stick the landing, but there was enough to like in it that I definitely was happy I saw it again, and I will certainly rewatch it again down the road. The other one I saw is one of my all-time favorite movies, The Matrix.
Oh, wow. Yes. Yancey loves that one.
Matrix?
I have seen The Matrix. You'd be proud of me.
I am proud of you. Matrix is a great movie. I love it. Again, I guess I must have like the whole supercomputer on the mind this week, but it was on television. And it was funny because I turned on the TV and it was sort of halfway through and I thought, oh, okay, I like this part. I'll watch the rest of it. And I did. And then like that would have been like probably at lunchtime. And then around dinner time, I turned on the TV to see what was on, and on the same channel, I guess they were looping a few different things that day. And it's like, coming up next, The Matrix. And I'm like, well, I might as well start watching it from the beginning. So I ended up watching the first half. So I watched it in its entirety, but I watched the second half and then the first half. And I enjoyed it that way just as much as I enjoy it the normal way. So
We did that before you came on the podcast full time. When Yancey was still here, we reviewed that show, and that was one of the shows he nominated. It's like one of his favorite movies of all time.
It's fantastic. Yeah, there's
pretty good.
very little to dislike about The Matrix.
Yeah, no, I was one of the movies that was nominated on the podcast that I actually enjoyed. So,
yeah,
go figure. What's going on with me? So obviously we've been, sort of in our house a lot lately. So I've been here with the kids, and we can't get out. I'm working from home, with everything that's going on right now. So I've had the opportunity to play a lot of board games with my kids. So one of them, I wanted to say thank you to you, Derek, because back at Christmas time, you gave me and the family here for Christmas, you bought us the Bob Ross Joy of Painting game, and we play it every single day. It's a very complicated game. It's supposed to be like 12 plus, but my kids are 7 and 10, and they both get it, and they love it. My 7-year-old all the time, Daddy, can we play Bob Ross? I'm like, okay. So we play Bob Ross all the time. But another game that he asked for at Christmas time was, my 7-year-old really likes Monopoly. So he asked for this Monopoly voice banking game. So the idea is it's got this top hat, and then you turn the top hat on. It's like electronic. And then what you do is, instead of actually handing out money and playing the game, you just speak your actions, and then it records them, and it records all the transactions of the money there. But the thing is, let's just say the technology is not quite perfected yet. So what'll happen is, you'll go to buy a property, and I'll land on let's say I start off and I roll, and I land on Vermont, and I land on it, and I'll say, push the button, I'll say buy, and I'll say, what property? And I'll say Vermont. You just bought Ventnor Avenue. And I'm like, no, I wanted Vermont. So, and then I'll land on another property that I have to pay rent on, and you push the button and say, pay rent on Pennsylvania. Your opponent does not own Park Place. I'm like, oh God. So I just hate playing that game. I hate it. So now my youngest son is like, can we play Monopoly voice bank? I'm like, no, I don't want to play it. It's awful. But we played a lot of board games and card games and everything else. But I wanted to thank you once again for Bob Ross, The Joy of Painting. It's such a great game. That is one I certainly enjoy playing.
Well, and very welcome. I'm glad the kids enjoy it, and I'm sure the wife appreciates it, because I'm sure you take the boys in the other room and play it, and you give her 5 minutes to herself.
We do,
or she plays it with you sometimes, I assume.
Yeah, sometimes she plays with us too, quite often. But sometimes I'll play with the boys too, just to give her a break. You're right. And then the other day I said, let's put on an episode of Bob Ross. So we went in the other room and we watched him paint this winter scene, and they just were mesmerized by it too. It just transcends generations. That's for sure. So yeah, no, we've definitely enjoyed playing the board games. Another thing I've really enjoyed doing that we've been hunkered down is doing podcasts. So what do you say we get started on this week?
Absolutely.
All right, let's go.
Left, right, left. Black guys, help the white guys.
Hare Krishna, Krishna.
Death before disco.
Yeah. Should have called him the dork.
I'm better than you. I can do whatever I want.
It's like going into Wisconsin.
You just broke my force field.
Yeah, well, I got the kicked out of me in Wisconsin once. Forget it.
Yeah, you win.
Okay, so this week it was over to me. I got to nominate the film. I went back to Gen X like I always do, because that's all I know. So I went back to 1988. Derek, you had never seen the movie that I nominated, which was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. You had never seen this movie, which is great. Great place for us to start. I nominated it because I wanted to see if this movie held up. We're going to kind of get into this tonight. We're going to get in the weeds with this movie. But I mean, when it came out at the time, it was sort of a groundbreaking movie in terms of technology. And now with all the CGI and everything that we have going on in filmmaking, I wanted to re-look at this movie and see how does it hold up. And so it's just fascinating that I'm able to get somebody who has never seen this movie. And I want to know, because you love all new movies, and with your perspective on this, I'm dying to know. So give me just an overview. Obviously, this movie was directed by Robert Zemeckis. Produced by Frank Marshall, which is great. And it was starring Bob Hoskins and Christopher Lloyd and Charles Fleischer, just as a bit of an overview. Had a budget of $50 million, which was a lot, obviously, back in 1988. And it made just over $156 million, which made it the highest grossing movie in 1988. And we'll take a look at the box office in a bit. But I want to just touch base with you on this movie. Well, you never saw Who Framed Roger Rabbit. What did you think?
So you had prefaced it in the end of the last show, just like you did now, how you wanted to see if it held up, because it was groundbreaking in the sense of animated characters and live action characters on the screen together in a cohesive story. It wasn't just like, hey, the guy has a dream sequence where suddenly there's cartoons. It was like full-on interaction with fully developed characters on both sides of it. And so from that point of view, I could certainly appreciate it and recognize its significance. But overall, I did not like this movie.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't. I think the real question for me, I kept struggling with, was who is the target audience for this movie? Because it seemed it was, if it was for kids, you had a lot of like humorous style, slapstick, cartoony humor, which certainly I would think would appeal to children. But yet some of the story elements seemed a little adult for a very young audience, and some of the like the whole idea is it's a mystery. Who framed him? And they're starting, like, the guy's a detective, so he's trying to put the pieces together. And I think for a really young audience, they're not really going to understand. They're not going to be able to put A to B to C to D to come up with the outcome. And on the other side, for grown-ups, it's like, I knew Who Framed Roger Rabbit like really early in the movie, and I was able to figure all that stuff out. So I'm thinking, okay, well, this seemed really easy to figure out, so it can't be for me. And I found that some of the cartoony stuff just seemed a little bit too silly or goofy. And the dialogue from some of the characters, just, it, like, I don't know, I had a hard time. I don't want to say taking it seriously because it's supposed to be a comedy, but it just seemed out of place. I had a real hard time sort of figuring out, like, is this a movie for really young kids, for teenagers, for like people in their 20s, 30s, for grown-ups? Like, I got the sense it was supposed to be a bridge for all of those groups, but in my mind, it really just wasn't hitting on any of them.
No, I get it, and that's fine. Let's come back to that in a little bit, because I think you bring up a good point. I want to touch base on who the audience is for this movie. I think it's important that we take a look at this. But, you mentioned you didn't like it, but I'll tell you, when it came out, it was a critical success as much as it was a hit with audiences. It was nominated for 7 Academy Awards. It won 4. So it was a big hit when it came out. I actually watched this movie on Disney Plus just last week. I saw this movie originally when it came out in the theater. So I owned a copy on VHS for, many years. So I've seen it a lot of times, but last week's was probably the first time I'd seen it in a long time. Now, going back to this movie, I've mentioned this before on this podcast. When we look back at these older movies, I always mention how important it is to take into consideration the time in which the movie came out. And that's definitely something I think we need to kind of go in with this movie and have a framework of here. Because when this movie was released, it was considered a major achievement in film. Even though, like, live action and animation had been done together before. I mean, heck, they've been doing this in movies all the way back to Song of the South. But the way that the actors interact with the tunes, as they're called, it was so interactive, and it involved obviously a lot of work from a production perspective. I'm sure we'll touch base on that more as we go through this podcast. And another thing that we often talk about when it comes to these older movies is like I say, the degree to which the film stands up. Now, you don't think this film stands up, right?
Well, I mean, I think
obviously
technical achievements stand up. I don't feel the movie, like, if you're just watching it to say, wow, look at how great these cartoons interact with these people from a like, we always joke and say, Chris, you're giving the textbook answer. If you're teaching a class about animation, for example, I think this would be a shining example of how to do it right. And I was reading some of the notes, and it said, like, they did things in this movie which were not typical in the past, where you had characters and cartoons interacting together, where they were like moving around. You didn't just have a steady camera in one place, which was often the way they had done it in the past. You had particular attention paid to light source and shadow, where as the camera was moving or light sources were moving, the shadows of the animated characters would be moving in such a way that it made sense. So it certainly took advantage of what had been done before it and brought it to the next level. And you see this with a lot of Zemeckis' films, right? You have it even with Back to the Futures 2 and 3. You see it in this movie. You see it in Forrest Gump a ton. You see it a little bit in Contact down the road. And then he does Polar Express and Beowulf. Both have a lot of computer animation. So it's obvious that he's keen on doing movies that have this animated style and take advantage of the technology. And certainly I don't knock that at all. but the plot, the story, the way the story came together, I didn't care for it. I didn't feel it held up.
Okay, but you felt the technology in it does hold up, even with CGI.
Given for its time frame, absolutely. You look at this and you could say like, wow, look at what they've done. And then you look at something like Attack of the Clones versus, say, Lord of the Rings, which came out only like a year or two after, and you're like, wow, Lucas should have been embarrassed with how some of his stuff looked compared to how hot on its heels Peter Jackson's stuff looks so amazing. With this one, you look at what came a little before it or a little bit after it, and you're still going, wow, like this is the high watermark for this kind of animation and live performance overlap. So yeah, from that point of view, I give it the kudos it deserves. And you said it won some Oscars. I suspect it was for those kinds of technical achievements, and that's great. Absolutely earns it. But, like, I'm sure nobody in this movie got nominated for a performance. I don't think it got nominated for a best script, a best screenplay, a best picture, a best director.
No. I mean,
I don't think it's the kind of movie that normally would get those things anyway.
No, it wouldn't. You're right. It won for best visual effects, film editing, sound editing, and a Special Achievement Academy Award as well. The thing is, though, I think that I want to just go back to, because you mentioned like you'd never seen this movie before this, which is interesting to me because you're a huge movie buff, just like I am. And like I say, this is a big hit that was considered groundbreaking when it came out. So I'm a bit surprised you had never seen it. Like, did you ever have a desire to see it, or was it just never something that was on your radar?
No, well, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you a big part of why I never saw it was I remember seeing the trailer, and the character of Roger Rabbit just seemed super annoying. And so I thought, that's going to bug me. And sure enough, when I watched it this week, that character was super duper annoying. And I just kept thinking to myself, oh, my God, like if this character was toned down half of what he was, I probably would have enjoyed the movie more. And again, I think they made the character the way they made the character to appeal to, say, young children. He did a lot of goofy, zany, cartoony things that you would expect a cartoon character to do to get laughs out of little kids. And it's like, well, make up your mind. Are you trying to be a movie for little kids? Are you trying to be a movie for grown-ups? You're trying to be a movie that sort of straddles the bar, and it's just felt it swung too far in either direction at some times. So yeah, no, I just never had any desire to see. I'm not a big fan of. Is it Bob Hoskins? Is that his name?
Yes.
The lead.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan. I mean, I've seen him do some great things, but I'm just not a big fan. And other than him, I didn't know who else was even in the movie. So when I saw Christopher Lloyd show up, I'm like, hey, look, Christopher Lloyd's in this movie. And then I remembered, oh, yeah, Zemeckis did the Back to the Future movies. They obviously had a pre-existing relationship. So he's like, hey, I'm going to have my friend Christopher Lloyd be in this movie. That made sense to me. But other than that, it's like, I'm not a fan of Bob Hoskins. I'm not. The character of Roger Rabbit looks super annoying in a 2-minute trailer. I'm like, no, that movie's not going to be for me.
Well, a couple things about the movie I want to talk about just from a technical point of view. The cinematography. I thought the camera work was great in this. You've touched base on this just a little bit ago. Like when you mentioned about the camera moving around, it could have been just so much easier for them to just keep the camera still for most of the shots. Would have made it a hell of a lot easier to animate the tunes in place and choreograph everything. But instead, the camera moves around a lot in the scenes, which I thought was really, really good. And the other thing is there was no CGI, obviously, back in 1988. There's no computers that they had to, they could tap into to accomplish the final product. It's just the work of animators hand-drawing characters into a movie frame by frame. So regardless if you think the movie holds up or not against today's technology, I think there's definitely no denying that this movie's a major accomplishment. And it's also, for me, when I watch it, it's like a labor of love. You can just tell the people that worked on this movie love movies and they love movie making. You can just tell it comes through in it.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's not just an accomplishment of movie making. This movie, to me, is entertaining as hell. I know you said that you thought it was boring and stuff.
No, disagree on that one, but
But let's start with the opening scene. And I don't know how to explain that opening scene other than saying it's almost exhilarating. It's craziness on a level of some of the old Bugs Bunny cartoons, but it's like kicked up a notch. Probably several notches. Like that Something's Cooking, the Maroon cartoon starring Baby Herman and Roger Rabbit. To me, it's a tour de force of hand-drawn animation. And when the baby breaks character after the scene and starts chomping on the cigar and telling off the director, you realize this is different. This kicks the movie to a different level. Bob Hoskins, you said you didn't like. I disagree. I thought he was great at this movie. Now, he's originally from England, and he talks with a natural British accent in his regular life, but obviously he uses an American accent for the role. And I don't know why it is, but I've always found it interesting when British actors use North American accents. I don't know what it is. I think sometimes we think of it sort of the other way around. Like we think of, I've always thought of other people having accents. But I'll tell you what, in my travels around the world, I've often found that people think the way they talk is normal. And they always say, I'm the one with the accent. Like I remember one time I went to Florida and people were like, I don't have an accent. You have an accent. And anytime I've been around the US for business and stuff, I think of Americans not having an accent. You know, like they have to put on an accent to get a British role. But there's lots of British actors who use an American accent. If I think of Andrew Lincoln in The Walking Dead, Gary Oldman, Alfred Molina, Jude Law, you know, the list goes on, right? But I thought Bob Hoskins did it very well here. You'd swear he grew up in Los Angeles. I don't know why you didn't like him in this movie. I thought he was great.
Well, it's not so much. It's not that I didn't like him. It's just that it's not that I didn't like his performance. I'm not a fan. Excuse me. I'm just not a fan of his work. And honestly, until you mentioned the accent, it never occurred to me that he wasn't using his real voice. Again, usually I'm pretty blind to that kind of thing. It doesn't bother me if a character's got an American accent, a British accent, whatever. Like with Game of Thrones, almost all the characters spoke with a British accent. You know, and then you have Peter Dinklage who spoke with his normal American accent. I'm like, didn't faze me at all. I can get over that. When I'm watching a movie, I can get like in just engaged in it so much that I can just sort of block that out. It's like when you watch a movie with subtitles. After 20 minutes, you don't even realize you're reading the subtitles. And that was the same I find with accents a lot of times. It might, unless it's being done very poorly or it stands out as being completely out of place. Usually I'm just, yeah, whatever. Let's go on with it.
Mm-hmm. Charles Fleischer, I want to mention too. He was the voice of Roger Rabbit. He was also on Laverne and Shirley. I remember him on that show. He was in like the later episodes, like after they moved from Milwaukee to Los Angeles. He played Chuck. He was Laverne's boyfriend. And he was also Carvelli on Welcome Back, Kotter. But there's another Laverne and Shirley connection that I want to mention because one of Judge Doom's cops, one of those rats, you know, remember the rat cops, was voiced by
Weasels. They were Weasels.
Weasels. I'm sorry. It was David Lander. I recognized it right away. I was watching this. I'm like, that's David Lander. That's Squiggy from Laverne and Shirley. But anyway, back to the movie itself. Like I mentioned, the opening scene, and when Roger's leaving the set and the director's threatening to fire him, and Roger's like grabbing at the guy's jacket, you can see that they would have had to pull the jacket, I don't know, with like fishing line or something.
Yeah.
You know, and you can tell just right away the amount of choreography and the logistics it would take to make this movie. Like scene by scene and frame by frame, like so much work went into pulling this thing off. But as for the movie itself, I just want to get into it a little bit. It's obviously Hollywood in the 1940s where tunes and people coexist. And, you know, Eddie Valiant jumps on the back of the streetcar with these kids and they give him cigarettes. And we'll get into a few other things in the film. We've already mentioned a few already that give it kind of that mature edge. So we'll come back to that. I don't know. I still think kids can watch it. But Joanna Cassidy was another cast member. You mentioned you didn't know who any of the cast was, but she was Dolores. You obviously didn't recognize her, right, Caveman? Because she was
I did not. I had to look her up and I still didn't recognize her.
She was in Blade Runner. She was the replicant that did the nude scene and ran through the plate glass windows. Yeah.
The girl with the snake. Okay.
Yeah.
I sort of was like, she looks a little familiar. I look at her up and I thought, well, maybe I need to see a picture of what she looks like now. And I'm looking and going, I don't know who this is. Now I do.
Yeah, so there you go. And so the next scene, Eddie Valiant goes into this back alley where there's like sliding slot on the door where he has to give a password to get in. So it's a speakeasy or a booze can, whatever they call it, which reminded me, I was watching the movie and it reminded me of this time when I was in university, not to get, you know, too personal, but I remember there was one time I was, I did a lot of acting when I was in university and stuff, and I fell in with this crowd. And I remember we went to a speakeasy one night. This guy took me. He's like, we got to go to this place. And we did the same thing. We knocked on the door. This thing slid open, and the guy said, blah, 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 whatever. And this other actor that I was with gave a password, and we went into this place. And like, I would never go to one again. It was pretty scary. But the one in this movie is just, it's hilarious. You got Donald and Daffy Duck playing pianos. And there's just so many things going on in that scene. It would have just been so much work to do. And then Jessica Rabbit comes out and does the musical number where she's doing the burlesque act. And obviously she's a tune, but her breasts were pretty prominent, you know? And I like how she says, I'm not bad, I'm just drawn this way. So again, maybe we'll come back to this now. Is this movie for kids or for adults or both? What do you think? You came into it fresh. You kind of touched base on it a bit. Who is this movie for?
Well, I think if I had to guess based on my experience, I would say that they were trying to make it for everyone, and I think they failed making it for anyone. Like, I think every group is going to find some things they like and some things they dislike. For me, I just found too many things in it I disliked or wasn't interested in. I didn't feel it really hit the mark for me on anything. I found, aside from admiring its technical achievement and recognizing its place in cinema history, I really didn't find a lot of other things that I liked about this movie.
I wanted to let my 10-year-old son watch this movie, and my wife said no. The movie had a PG rating when it came out, but then my wife went and looked up somewhere online that said if the movie was made today, that it would be PG-13 or even have an R rating. I disagree with that.
Yeah, I don't think the R rating. There wasn't any real sex, violence, blood. The violence is cartoon violence, which in today's culture is something your kids have seen. They watched the Avengers movie. They've seen more violence than that already.
I agree. I mean, Bob Hoskins, like I mentioned, gets cigarettes from kids. Jessica Rabbit is basically the embodiment of sexuality. And there's some violence, like you mentioned, but that does not constitute an R rating. You know, I don't think.
Yeah. But I definitely agree with the idea that it probably would be rated PG-13. Like, I don't think it would get the family-friendly PG that it got back then, based on if it came out today.
Yeah, and
that's just me.
Yeah, and that's what my wife said. She said PG in 1988 is much different than PG today.
Oh, for sure.
And I think she's probably right. But back to some of the scenes, the gorilla bouncer then grabs Eddie and throws him out in the alley. And they didn't have those wire fighting gear like they did in The Matrix, you know, that you mentioned earlier. They didn't have that then. Like, so just how do they pull some of these scenes off? Again, I thought it was pretty cool. So then Eddie goes and spies on Jessica having an affair with Marvin Acme. And the implication is sex, but they're playing patty cake, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah.
And the cop comes and then tells Eddie that Marvin Acme is dead. Like a safe dropped on his head. And I recognize the cop because I'm like, that's the guy from Top Secret with Val Kilmer. He was Nick Rivers' agent, just an aside. And then the lieutenant I recognized from Star Wars. I recognize him right away. He was the guy that Vader choked out in the meeting room on the Death Star. Remember where Grand Moff Tarkin says Vader release him?
I know the scene. Yeah. I don't remember the guy.
I remember that guy, another aside. And then I thought it was interesting that they mentioned dip was turpentine, acetone, and benzene. I don't know why.
I assume those are things you would use to clean animation cells.
I don't know. That's a good point.
I gotta think that was, again, sort of a little inside. There was a lot of, I looked it up after. There was a lot of like inside jokes. Like you had said before with the speakeasy, the password was Walt sent me, implying Walt Disney sent me.
Right. Good point.
You know, a lot of little things. And then I also read that, so you mentioned with the dueling pianos with Daffy Duck and Donald Duck. Mm-hmm. I was reading that this is the only time that you have Warner Brothers and Disney characters featured prominently in the same movie at the same time. And apparently through contract negotiations, the two companies wanted to make sure that their characters had equal screen time and that one company didn't have their characters featured more prominently than the other. So whenever any of like the major characters are featured, they're almost always paired up with somebody from the other company. So you have Donald Duck and Daffy Duck dueling pianos, almost exactly the same screen time. And then later when he falls, when Bob Hoskins is in the cartoon town and he falls out of the building, and there's the two skydiving, it's Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse again together, same amount of screen time. And at the end of the movie, you have Porky Pig and Tinkerbell given the sort of final farewells. So, you know, again, it's some of these little wink things that you may not pick up on originally, but when you start to dig in, there was a lot of interesting trivia behind the scenes as to why certain things were done certain ways.
Well, we mentioned before about whether or not it's for kids or adults. Another scene that kind of sticks out was when Eddie comes back to the apartment and Baby Herman is there in a stroller in the hall, and there's the woman leaning over him. You see her butt sort of prominently displayed, we'll say. And Baby Herman makes a comment about her when she walks away, and he says,
"Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, the problem is I got a 50-year-old lust and a 3-year-old dinky." Again, this is probably the inappropriateness my wife was talking about. Maybe she's right about me letting my 10-year-old watch this. But then I thought it was interesting when Roger cuffs himself to Eddie. And again, when you think about to pull that off theatrically with the mix of the live action animation, I don't know. I watched it from a different lens. I was like, this is impressive. And going back to the inappropriateness, Eddie puts Roger in his jacket and goes to see Dolores. And she says, "Is that a rabbit in your pocket, or are you just glad to see me?"
Yeah.
Again, probably kudos to my wife. She might be right about this whole thing. I don't know. So one thing we always ask, could they make this movie today? Derek, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, they certainly could from a technical standpoint. It'd probably be a lot easier to make it today because of the advancement with computer animation and green screen and motion capture and all of that stuff. So from that point of view, the straight up, can they do it? Yes. Now, I think they would have a hard time getting the licensing. I think that, having Warner Brothers and Disney sign off on it, there's too many dollars to be made that neither company would want to share with the other. So I think that would be a big problem. I think you would have to have one studio have some exclusivity around there. But I think that you would need a compelling reason to do it. Like, again, I didn't find the plot to this movie all that compelling. Like, the movie's called Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and it's like I didn't really feel there was a lot of mystery around that. So I don't know. The story, you either have to have very compelling characters, which I didn't feel this had, or a very compelling story, which I didn't feel this one had. And you could certainly gain some additional credibility by having big, well-known actors with great pedigree sort of in the lead roles. But at the same time, if I'm somebody who's, the hottest thing right now, do I really want to be in a movie where I'm sharing half the screen time with an animated cartoon character? Because it's been done a lot and it hasn't always been met with success. This one is sort of the exception rather than the norm.
I think if they did make it today, one thing they'd have to do differently for sure, Bob Hoskins would have to wax his back hair.
Yeah, that was a little bit unnecessary.
And, the hygiene was not the same, back in the 1988, obviously.
Yep.
A couple more things just about the animation and the live action that I like. The scene when they're in the bar, when Roger's entertaining all the barflies and he's smashing the plates on his head. Again, so much would have went into it. Like, the plates are real. The set's real.
Yeah.
The stools and everything. And then the whole scene of driving around in the Toon Cab.
Yeah.
To me, that's what movie magic is all about. Like, it's memorable. I don't know. It's just so fun. It's just so much more theatrically impressive than any CGI crap that's out now. And I'll tell you, when Eddie goes through the tunnel into Toontown, I remember, like I mentioned, I went to see this in the theater back in 88. And I remember watching this in the theater. And that was a really big moment. The audience loved it when he went through there. They had this visceral reaction to the whole scene. It was just funny. I don't know. Times have changed. You mentioned a couple of other, tunes that were in it, from different studios and things like that. I recognize Betty Boop was in there. Droopy was the elevator operator. Mickey Mouse, Tweety Bird, I thought one line that I thought was interesting was when Eddie says to Jessica, he's like, "What do you see in that guy?" And she says, "He makes me laugh."
Makes me laugh.
I don't know. I thought it was pretty good. The weasel reaches into Jessica's dress and gets snapped by the bear trap. And Eddie's line is, "Nice booby trap."
I thought, again, like that kind of behavior, even with the animated characters, is a little dated. There wasn't as much of it in there. And again, you sort of forgive it because it's animated. But that's some of those things, if they were to remake a story like this, they'd have to be a little more sensitive to today's political correctness, even if they are animated characters. I mean, you look at something like Simpsons and Family Guy, a lot of times they can get away with saying things, or even South Park, they get away with saying a lot of things simply because it's coming out of the mouth of a cartoon character, or like in South Park, they're little kids saying these outrageous things, or in Family Guy, it's the dog saying it. So yeah, I think that would certainly be top of mind for any sort of commentary or any of those little rude wink wink kind of jokes if they were to remake it.
What about the warehouse scene at the end? Did you enjoy that in any way?
I found it ran way too long.
Yeah.
It just kept going and going. Like by then it's like, okay, I know where this is going. I know how this is going to end. I had figured it all out. I don't think I'm normally I like to think I'm a pretty astute film goer. Like I usually pick up on the clues and stuff, but this one seemed just like really obvious, bang you over the head with it again, because I think they were trying to appeal to kids, so they were trying to make it a mystery where nobody in the movie knows what's going on, but you as the audience, wink wink, you know. And I just thought it took forever to come to a resolution. And yeah, like I remember looking over at the clock going, wow, it's like I looked up the runtime and I was like, there's like 25 or 30 minutes left. What are they going to do? And it's just the scene kept going on and on and on. Didn't care for it. Didn't like it. Maybe the ending will save this movie for me. No.
See, I like when Eddie went into the vaudeville shtick and he makes the tunes laugh themselves to death. Because that whole warehouse scene, there was so much going on with the dip cannon and the sword fight, that singing sword with Sinatra's voice, and that old cartoon standard with the giant magnet and the Acme steamroller and all that. And then you find out Judge Doom, he's really like a tune, and not just any tune, right? Obviously, he's the high-pitched voice and the red eyes guy that killed Eddie's brother. Yep. So I like how they shoot him with the dip and he starts to melt. And then his line is, "Oh, what a world, what a world!" Like the Wicked Witch of the West. I thought the movie was a lot of fun to go back and watch. I really enjoyed it. I think it stands up. I also heard that they're currently in production of Who Framed Roger Rabbit 2.
If they are, great. But I mean, I haven't heard anything. They're not going to get my money. They didn't get my money on this one. They're not getting my money on the next one. I'm also going to be pretty reluctant to give them another 2 hours of my life.
Yeah, Who Framed Roger Rabbit 2, you know what I think of, sequels, especially, now, all these years later. Needless to say, I think it's a terrible idea. So you're going to rate this movie pretty low out of 10?
Well, again, if we're looking at technical achievement and importance as a film, I'm probably going to give it like maybe a 7 or an 8. But overall, like, would you recommend it to your friends? No. Would you recommend it to their kids? No. I'm going to give this like a 5.
Okay, I think I would give it a 7 overall, and I'm just a little bit more surprised that you didn't like it better, just because you're such a movie buff, just for kind of where it kind of fits in, in the overall sort of perspective of films and accomplishments and things like that. I thought you might like it better, but that's the way it works around here. I don't like your movies. You don't like my movies. That's what we do. That's how we do it. But on that note, what do you say we have some
fun with Caveman?
Okay, so it's over to you. I made the movie pick, so what have you got for me from a trivia or a fun point of view?
Yeah, so before we jump into that, I just want to point out, so I'm looking at Robert Zemeckis, the director of this movie. I'm looking at his filmography here, and it occurred to me that this is now the third Zemeckis movie that's been reviewed on this podcast. You and Yancey did Contact and Back to the Future before this, did you not?
Yes, I didn't know that he directed Contact.
Yeah, so this would be his third one on the list. And I'm looking sort of going, would there be... He also did Forrest Gump and Castaway, both movies I love. So maybe some point down the road we may do one of those. But
he's a pretty good director, obviously.
He's a very good director.
Yeah,
I'm looking at his list here, and it's like I've seen a lot of his movies. And the ones that I've seen, for the most part, I really enjoyed. Yeah. So anyway, that was just a side note. I thought I would bring that up. Okay, so as we've mentioned here, we're going into the trivia part. Mm-hmm. This is not the first time that you've had a movie with live people and cartoons interacting. There have certainly been movies where you have people live action and then it will like cut to a cartoon. So like I even said during the conversation a half hour ago, sometimes you'll have like a character falls asleep and there's a dream sequence and the dream is all animated or something like, or the guy's watching a TV show and suddenly the TV comes to life within the set and it's very contained. But we have had some good and some not so good examples of animation like this where they directly interact with the live performances. Some good, some bad, some memorable, some forgettable. I've got a few here, and I'm going to ask you some questions, and you got to try and figure out which movie we're talking about.
Oh, this ought to be interesting.
These are movies that have actual cartoons interacting with people.
Okay. Yep.
All right. Some of these are super easy, super obvious, super right on the nose, and I'm going to be shocked.
I'm going to have no idea. Yeah.
But I found a few that are a little more challenging, or I tried to play with the wording a bit to maybe try and just mask a tiny hint And most of these are older because the newer ones are all computer. And I tried to stay away from that because I wanted ones that were actually cartoons, old school draw 'em out cartoons, not computer cartoons.
Okay.
So with that in mind, nice, easy law ball right over the plate for you on the first one. You ready here?
Sure, go for it.
Tell me the name of this movie. A magical nanny employs music and adventure to help two neglected children become closer to their father.
It's Mary Poppins.
It is indeed.
Yes,
Mary
yeah, there's like the penguins and stuff. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, easy one.
Nice, easy one. Okay, here's another relatively easy one. Cartoon characters recruit a minor league baseball player to help them win a basketball tournament.
Oh, that's one of Yancey's favorite movies of all time, Space Jam?
It is Space Jam.
Yes.
Wow, really? This is his favorite movie.
Yeah, he loves that movie. I remember him talking about that over and over.
The whole joke was that the at this point in real life, this was from 1996. Michael Jordan, arguably the best basketball player ever, had retired from basketball and decided he wanted to be a baseball player, and that's worked right into the premise of the movie, where all the best basketball players of the time are turned into animated monsters to play for the bad guys' basketball team, and then the heroes are like, well, Michael Jordan wasn't taken because he's a baseball player now. So
right. With the Chicago White Sox, I remember I had his upper deck card. Yep.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember the specifics, but I remember seeing Space Jam when it first came out because I was working at Blockbuster Video around that time. Saw it once. It's much like this movie. I'm just like, meh, okay, whatever. Didn't really care for it. Not my jam. No pun intended. All right. I've never seen this movie, so this question comes right out of the research from the IMDb, so hopefully I've got it right here.
All
okay.
right.
The title character's wish to become a fish is granted when he falls into the water at Coney Island. With the help of his underwater friends, he helps the U.S. Navy locate and sink Nazi U-boats in 1941.
I remember this was Don Knotts, and it was the incredible Mr. Limpet. Yes, I remember that. I remember watching that on TV with my mom when I was a kid. She was like, "Oh, you got to watch this movie, son," and we watched it. And I thought it was pretty dumb, but I remember watching it with my mother growing up. Yeah.
All right. This one might be a little more difficult for you because it's a little newer, but you have kids, so maybe you've seen it. Okay. The animated title character and his best friend leave home to track down a stolen crown. A memorable encounter with David Hasselhoff was featured prominently in the movie's trailer. Name the movie.
Oh, this almost seems familiar to me, but I cannot think of it off the top of my head. I don't know.
It was the SpongeBob SquarePants movie.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that now. Yes.
Okay, next one. This one I think you might get. It's a little older.
Okay.
An orphan boy and his best friend Elliot, who is a larger-than-life cartoon character, moved to Maine and live in a lighthouse. Don't confuse this movie's title with the well-known Peter, Paul, and Mary song.
Is that Pete's Dragon?
It is Pete's.
Yes. Didn't they remake that again just the last couple of years? And I was like, no, you got to go back and watch the one from the 70s.
Honestly, don't remember.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. This is a little bit of a longer question. I'm going to ask you to name two movies. To get full points, I need both movies answered correctly. And I honestly think you're going to miss both of them.
I shall do my best.
All right. In 2001, that's why I think you're going to miss this. In 2001, Brendan Fraser played a cartoonist who comes face to face with his own animated creation after suffering a head injury. 2 years later, Brendan Fraser starred alongside Warner Brothers' most recognizable cartoons and a tremendous cast of character actors and comedians. Name both movies.
George of the Jungle?
Nope.
Nope, that I'm wrong on both. Okay. I have no idea.
Okay. Hey, this was a little bit of a tough one. I thought one of them you would get for sure. That's why I threw the two-parter. So the first one is called Monkey Bone from 2001.
Never heard of it.
The second one is from 2003, Looney Tunes Back in Action.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
Yeah. And that I figured you might have said like the Looney Tunes movie, which I probably would have given you. But anyway, no marks on that one. Sorry, pal.
Yeah.
Okay. This one I think you're going to get. An apprentice witch, 3 kids, and a cynical magician search for the missing component to a magic spell that's to be used in the defense of Britain during World War II.
One more time?
An apprentice witch,
okay,
3 kids, and a cynical magician Search for the missing component to a magic spell that's to be used in the defense of Britain in World War II.
I have no idea.
It was from 1971. It was called Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
Oh, I've never seen that movie. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
You've heard of it, though. Yeah, I remember seeing it as a kid.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. Mm-hmm. This is one of my. This is a movie I enjoy more so for the soundtrack than the movie. But animated bombshell Hollywood, played by Kim Basinger, transports a cartoonist into her animated world with a scheme to seduce him and bring herself to life. Her nemesis is the only other human among the cartoons, a lawman played by Brad Pitt.
I've never seen this movie, but I've heard of it. Isn't it Cool World?
It is yes. Cool World.
I've
Cool
never
World
seen
had a super amazing soundtrack. It was awesome. The movie was just so-so.
I just remember it in my mind of being like live action and cartoon mixed together. Yeah. Never saw it though.
All right, that was pretty good. You got most of them. You only missed a couple. And,
the Brendan Fraser one really got me. I didn't know.
Yeah, that was sort of my whole card. I didn't think you were going to get that one. Sorry, bud. I had to throw a couple of newer ones in there because some of our listeners would have actually known those movies, including probably anyone who worked with me at Blockbuster, because that's the kind of crap we watched back then.
There you go. All right, so next show, it's over to you. It's your movie. Do you have a movie that you would like to nominate for me to watch?
I do. The movie I want you to watch is called Memento.
Memento.
I don't have the details in front of me. I want to say it was from 2000, if I remember correctly, and the director was Christopher Nolan, who went on to do the Batman movies. Have you ever seen it?
I have never seen it, no.
Okay. I want you to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Do not look up anything about this movie before watching it. Don't look up the runtime. Don't look up who's in it. Don't look up anything. There is a lot of mystery in this movie, and a simple internet search may ruin some of the biggest mysteries in its synopsis. So if you can find it on your streaming services or download it, watch Memento. Come back next week. We'll do a review.
I'll do that. The only thing I would say that I know about Memento is that for some reason, I think I've heard that it's really trippy, but other than that, I don't know anything about it. Like, I mean, I know.
Come back next week and we'll talk more about it. I don't want to say anything because I don't want to ruin any of it. I hope you enjoy it, and the less you know going in, I think the more likely you are to enjoy it.
Okay, that's what I'll do. I will avoid any type of research on it in any way, and I'll just go in and watch it and tell you what I think. 2000, though, it's a while ago. It's 20 years ago. So I'm liking it, but it's not 40 years ago, which I like even better. Go figure. But okay, so that's what I'll do. I'll watch Memento, and we'll come back next time when we'll review that. If you want to reach out to Derek, like I mentioned at the top of the show, you can find him on Twitter at Amaron_DM. You will find me on Twitter at CMcBrien, and popgoesyourworld.com is our website with all our contact information. You can send us an email. Until next time, this is Chris McBrien for Derek Myers saying thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.